What's going on, guys? It's Nick here, back with another video. It's Thursday, so time to go over another player breakdown. This one, we're going over a second round decision between Justin Jefferson and Calvin Ridley. I'll be working under the assumption that Julio is not on the Falcons this season. As you can see on the screen, I'm recording this on June 1st. The Falcons saved a ton of money by making this move after June 1st, so I would not be surprised at all if he gets traded away the day after I record, the day this goes up to upload. So I'm just going to assume that he is not on the team because that's where it's kind of leaning. Although, just to be safe, at the final ranking decision, I'm still going to give a take under both scenarios. So I'll give a take if he stays and then if he ends up getting traded away. And remember, once these videos are uploaded, obviously that's it, right? There's no going back and changing things. So if you always want my up-to-date take on this as well as every other combo you can think of, you can check out my exact rankings at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. So with that, let's get things started off as usual, the stat of the day. Yesterday's stat: how many running backs in 2020 received 10 or more red zone targets? The answer is 10. Jacob Massive was the first to get that on YouTube, and I Am Sora Hebs was the first to get that on Twitter. Today's stat was which defense allowed the most opponent rushing touchdowns per game last season. All right, let's dig into this breakdown. First up, we're going to do Calvin Ridley. So as I alluded to at the beginning of this one, the status of Julio Jones obviously has a major impact on the value of Calvin Ridley, right? I mean, Julio has averaged 9.9 targets per game since Ridley's rookie season in 2018. So removing a player that's, getting 10 targets a game is going to have a massive impact on not only the number two, but everyone else in the offense. Over his short 3-year career, Ridley has played in 8 total games with Julio Jones inactive. His points per game have increased by 5.5, averaging nearly 3 more receptions for an additional 35 yards per game. Ridley's average stat line without Julio is 7.25 receptions for 107 yards and just over 20 fantasy points. Those are pretty insane numbers, and they're good enough to finish as a top 3 to 5 wide receiver in basically every season. You put up those numbers, you're going to be a top 5 receiver, probably going to be a top 3 receiver, no matter how good the other receivers are in fantasy that season. Now, going into last season, people did have questions as to whether or not Ridley could perform as well as he had been without Julio Jones. People mentioned Juju as a comparison, saying, okay, Juju was incredible when they had Antonio Brown, and then when AB left, we realized that Juju just isn't a number 1 wide receiver. He cannot win consistently on the outside as the top threat, and so they had to find better outside options, had to move him into the slot, and he's really good in the slot, but people were like, okay, maybe it's not like he has to be in the slot for Calvin Ridley, but maybe he's not an alpha receiver. Maybe when Julio is out, if he misses time, if he, this season, gets traded away, maybe we don't know if Calvin Ridley can win as the guy. But that was not the case when Julio missed time last season. Calvin Ridley thrived. And if Julio leaves, we're going to see more of the same this season. Because realistically, what else are they going to do, right? Some of the players we break down have some sort of path to busting, whether it's, other talent at wide receiver, tight end, volume concerns of the offense being a low volume offense, or their quarterback play is just putrid, right? Most receivers just have something that would cause them to bust, but the only way Ridley would bust if Julio Jones is not there is through an injury. Atlanta has no viable ground game. Mike Davis is fine, but he was pretty below average as a runner last season. There's no way he's going to be more efficient on the Falcons. This defense is going to be trash again, so they're going to be playing from behind a lot. They're going to have a high pass play rate. And while Matt Ryan is certainly declining, he's not Big Ben levels of dust, right? He can still play, and I wouldn't be concerned at all about quarterback play having Matt Ryan out there. This is going to be a high volume offense. Ridley will clearly be the number 1 receiver, and we can trust Matt Ryan's a quarterback that will just pepper him with targets. He's not someone that's going to always spread it around no matter who he has. He will pepper Calvin Ridley with targets, and that's why Ridley ties Hopkins as the second safest wide receiver according to my risk model this season, even taking injuries into account. And unfortunately, I know some people are still going to be very concerned about his injury history, so we'll absolutely need to go over that. But just a blanket statement. There are very, very few players that I care about injuries when I'm looking at them. And for the vast majority of them, it means they're already hurt. So think about maybe an updated take on Saquon Barkley. There are some reports right now coming out that maybe to start the season, he's not going to be 100%. Well, now we look at that and we say, okay, that's a boost to injury risk because he's already hurt. So injury risk isn't like necessarily 100%. This dude always gets hurt, and so his injury risk is high. It could be he pulled his hamstring in the second week of the preseason. Well, yeah, now he's a risk to start the season, on the IR, or maybe just start the season with limited snaps. Obviously, if you already have an injury, you're at elevated risk of re-injuring that thing because it's already hurt. So we're much, much more concerned when someone comes into the season already injured. But let's go over the past of Calvin Ridley just to put you guys at ease. So he was mostly healthy as a rookie. He had a minor ankle injury but didn't miss any games. As a sophomore, he suffered a hip strain and an abdominal strain, with the last one being the major one. The hip injury didn't force him to miss any time, but the ab strain made him miss the final 3 weeks of the season. Then last year he has that ankle sprain and a foot sprain. And the foot sprain caused him to miss 1 game in week 9. But other than that, he was good to go for the whole season. So all in all, he's had, a few minor injuries, but none have been major. And he's only missed 4 of a possible 48 weeks. Again, that is not concerning. If he'd torn both of his ACLs, we'd be like, oh, maybe that's a concern. If he'd torn his Achilles, that's a huge concern. If he was getting a hamstring every single week, that's a concern. But these minor injuries, missing minor amounts of time, they're not a problem to me. So I don't think injuries should be of any concern when you're making a decision on Calvin Ridley. And because of that, since we have no other concerns, he's just one of the safest picks you can make and obviously has a ton of upside. I mean, just think about his targets. Look at his targets in the 8 games without Julio Jones in his career. 10, 13, 10, 9, 12, 14, 9, and 11. With yardage totals of 91, 110, 136, 50, 124, 163, 130, and 52. We know with close to 100% certainty, he's going to be a top 10 wide receiver if Julio is gone. And that's just not something you can say about basically anyone. I mean, there are very, very few players at any position that you can just confidently say they're going to be ones. You just know with 100% certainty, at least skill positions. We kind of know with quarterbacks, but if we're looking at running backs, we're looking at wide receivers, how many can we really say that we are just basically 100% sure if they don't get hurt, they're going to be top-end options? And we can say that with Calvin Ridley. But what if Julio stays? Well, we can look at last season. In the 8 games that Julio and Ridley were both active, Ridley had a 16-week pace of 80 receptions for a little over 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns, scoring about 17.5 PPR points per game. A number like that effectively ties him with Keenan Allen for 6th in points per game, just ahead of A.J. Brown, Will Fuller, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf. I mean, he showed the same target ceiling, but the only difference here will be that the floor will be lowered, right? So if we're looking at the Falcons with Julio Jones, you know that they're going to have some games where they're forced to throw the ball. Calvin Ridley's getting peppered with targets. But they'll also have some games where they don't need to throw it as much. Maybe Julio goes off, and Calvin Ridley ends up more in that 5 to 7 range. So the ceiling, weekly, season-long, all that is the same. It's just that the floor gets a little bit lowered, and of course that's going to impact his value. If he's having, more games with closer to 9 or 10 fantasy points, well, that's going to hurt. If Ridley is the only guy there, then he's not going to have very many of those games, and of course that's going to make him a better option. So regardless, dude's a wide receiver 1, pretty clear cut. If Julio's there, Julio's not there, but he's a very high-end option, and we'll get to the exact ranking if Julio is gone, which I think is going to be the case. But let's move on to Justin Jefferson, because Ridley might be a slam dunk pick, but realistically, so is Justin Jefferson. Last season, he broke Anquan Bolden's rookie receiving yardage record, posting a stat line of 88 for 1,400 yards and 7 touchdowns at age 21. And it was a young 21 as well. His birthday's in June. So he had just turned 21 years old, and he just shatters rookie records, right? And this is somewhat noteworthy when you're looking at his career arc, because Calvin Ridley has been fantastic in his early career. But he was 24 years old as a rookie. So Justin Jefferson won't be the same age as Ridley was in his rookie season until the start of the 2023 season. That is wild to think about. So yeah, Ridley had almost 1,400 yards last season, but he was held under 70 receiving yards per game in his age 24 and his age 25 season, while Jefferson just gained over 1,400 yards as a 21-year-old rookie. And he did so while ranking in the 91st percentile in success rate versus man, 96th percentile in success rate against the press. I mean, are you kidding me? Like, he is already an elite wide receiver, a top 10% wide receiver. It is just terrifying to think about how good he could be over these next few seasons. He doesn't even need to take a step forward. I mean, when you talk about these young receivers, like, wow, how good could they be if they improve a little bit in this area, if they just take a little bit of a step forward? That is not needed for Justin Jefferson. He is already, all he has to do is what he did last season. He's already incredible. Unfortunately, his offense is what's holding him back. We went over with Ridley how it's just the perfect spot because we know the quarterback play will be there. We know the volume will be there. And of course, the talent is there. Well, the few of those are true with Jefferson. We know the talent is there, and we're pretty sure the quarterback play is going to be there. I mean, I don't consider Cousins like an incredible quarterback, but, look around the league. Like, you certainly be worse. The issue is the Vikings organization. They love to run the ball, and they really go all out while Dalvin Cook is healthy. That's resulted in them ranking 30th and 27th in pass attempts per game these last 2 seasons. The Falcons threw the ball 7 more times per game than the Vikings did last year, and that's the same number of targets that Adam Thielen averaged last season. That is a massive buffer, and it means that Jefferson needs to either have a much higher target share or be more efficient than Ridley, like a lot more efficient. I mean, 7 more targets per game are available in Atlanta. And it's like, obviously they could be different from last season, but what are we expecting to change? I mean, these offenses are going to be similar to what they were last season. Maybe Atlanta takes a slight bump down, but look at their defense. I mean, it's not like they can run the ball every play, and look at how they're set up. Doesn't look like they want to run the ball every play, so they're probably still going to be top 3 in pass attempts per game. And realistically, we're talking about those 2 things that Jefferson would need. You need to crush him in target share or crush him in efficiency. No matter what happens, do we expect either of those to happen? If Julio stays, Ridley still won't be far off Jefferson in target share. I mean, Adam Thielen is still on the Vikings. And then we look at efficiency. Well, Ridley's going to be very, very efficient when Julio is there. Then if Julio leaves, well, maybe Ridley drops in efficiency. But, I mean, the target share would be absolutely insane. It'd definitely beat Justin Jefferson. So for those reasons, honestly, I just think you have to rank Ridley over Justin Jefferson, with the note that both of them are going to have massive target shares. Both of them are going to be on good offenses. Both of them are elite wide receivers. You can't go wrong with either. As far as my exact rankings, currently I have Calvin Ridley as wide receiver 7 and Justin Jefferson as the wide receiver 8. Both listed as targets. Those rankings are assuming that Julio stays. If Julio is confirmed gone, then Ridley deserves to be ranked with Devonta Adams and Tyreek Hill as a top 3 wide receiver. And he would be a viable pick starting in like the early 2nd round. I think in the 1st round would be a little bit aggressive. There's still a ton of good wide receivers available. There is still Adams, there is still Tyreek Hill, there is still Travis Kelce. So kind of pushing him ahead of those guys would be aggressive. But in that early to mid 1st round, that is where Calvin Ridley should be going if Julio Jones is gone. And I think it is a fantastic pick because of how safe it is. And honestly, I think like the top 8 wide receivers this season is fairly clear. We've done 2 videos breaking down 5 of them. So you guys know my order right now. Again, this is technically this ranking assuming that Julio stays, is Diggs, Metcalf, Brown, Ridley, then Jefferson. You guys know I have it ranked like that. But like I said, Ridley jumps over Diggs, Metcalf, and Brown if Julio is gone. So that's, 5-year top 8. Obviously, the guys that are remaining there are Adams, Tyreek Hill, and Hopkins, and I do have it in that order. So there's my top 8. But if you want to see me breaking down any of those top 3, like you want to see a video on Adams, Tyreek Hill, Hopkins, or you want to see some receivers going later, so outside of that top 8, going in more of the middle rounds, then you got to let me know in the comment section. I want to do the videos that you guys want to see. Tweet them at me. I posted polls. I posted a poll on what you want to see next, and this is what you guys voted for. But you got to be engaged on Twitter. You've got to be engaged in the comment section, because I don't know what you're thinking if you don't tell me. We're doing one of these every single Thursday, so let me know what you want to see next week in the comment section down below. Also, remember, you can check out my latest take on every single player at our website, thefantasyfootballadvice.com, and the individual breakdowns are starting to go up. I've done a breakdown of about 40 players so far. 20 players go up every other week. So if you want more video content on every player, you can always check it out over there. Again, thefantasyfootballadvice.com. That, my friends, is the end of this one. Hope you all did enjoy. If you did, then how about hitting that like button, and how about subscribing to the channel if you're new? Thanks for watching.